You own a bag of this powder right now and you do not even know it. Or your grandmother did. It sits in a feed store for about $9. It kills any bug that crawls across it. Ants, roaches, fleas, bed bugs, silverfish, the beetles in your flour. And it does it without a single drop of poison. I was raised plain in Holmes County, Ohio, and we have used this powder for as long as anyone in my family can remember. My grandfather kept a sack of it in the grain barn before I was born. The outside world calls it a miracle. We just called it Tuesday. Now here is the part that ought to make you a little angry. The same companies that sell you the $30 spray, the fogger, the little plug-in machines, the monthly service truck that pulls into your driveway, they have known about this powder the whole time. They have no reason to tell you. A man does not sell you a service. You can do yourself with something already sitting in your shed. So stay with me, because right around the middle of this, I'm going to show you exactly how to clear a whole house of fleas or roaches for less than the price of a cup of coffee, the slow, patient way my grandfather did it, with no exterminator and no chemicals near your grandchildren. Before we go on, do me one small favor, drop a comment, and tell me which bug you are fighting right now. Ants, roaches, fleas, bed bugs. Just type the one word. I read them, and what you are fighting changes how you should use this powder. So I want to know. I still remember the smell of that old grain barn, dust in the light from the high window, the sweet, dry smell of oats. My grandfather would scoop a handful of this gray-white powder from a burlap sack and let it sift through his fingers along the bottom boards where the rats and the weevils tried to come in. He never raised his voice about it. He never made it a big thing. He just said, the little ones cannot cross it, and the big ones do not like to. I did not understand what I was looking at back then. I do now. And once you understand it, you will never pay for what you do not need again. And if you want to go deeper than any single video can take you, I wrote all of this down. Every method, every trick, every old remedy my family kept. In a book called The Garden Blueprint, Old-Fashioned Pest Cures That Cost Pennies. It is part of a full set that also covers soil, harvest, and storage. Everything gathered under one roof in the Complete Garden Field Edition, available right now for $97 through the link in the description. These are the pages I wish someone had handed me when I was young, and they are yours to keep for good, not rent for a month. If you have been tired of paying strangers to half-solve problems your grandparents handled themselves, that link is waiting for you down below. Now let me tell you what this powder actually is, because the name sounds like something from a laboratory, and it is the opposite of that. It is called diatomaceous earth. Say it slow. Diatomaceous earth. It is not a chemical. It is not man-made. Nobody mixed it in a factory. It is rock. Soft, crumbled, ancient rock, ground into a fine flour. Millions of years ago, the lakes and the seas were full of tiny living things called diatoms. Smaller than you can see, little plants, almost, with hard, glassy shells around them. When they died, they sank, billions of them, layer on layer on the bottom of those waters. Over a very long time, those tiny shells packed down into a soft white stone. We dig it up, we grind it. And that powder in the bag is nothing but the skeletons of those little creatures, each one sharper than any blade a man ever forged. Now here is where it gets good. To you and me, that powder feels soft, smooth, like talc. You can rub it between your fingers all day and feel nothing but silk. But you are the size of a barn to an ant. To a bug, that same powder is a field of broken glass. Every one of those fossil shells has edges. Razor edges. On a scale so small your eye will never see it. When an ant or a roach or a flea walks across this powder, those edges score right through the waxy coat on the outside of its body. Now you need to understand something about a bug that most folks never stop to think about. A bug does not have skin like you do. It has a shell on the outside and a thin layer of wax over that shell. That wax is the only thing holding its water inside. A bug is mostly water, same as you, but it has no way to drink its way back to full. It cannot sweat. It cannot hold itself together once that seal is broken. So when the powder scratches through that waxy coat, the bug starts to dry out. It cannot stop it. It walks a little farther, carrying the dust on its legs and belly, and the whole time it is losing water, it can never get back. Within a day or two, sometimes hours, it simply dries up and dies. No poison, no nerve agent, no spray that needs a mask and an open window, just dust and time and the plain laws of nature. And here is why this matters more than any spray you have ever bought. A bug can learn to survive a poison. It happens all the time. You spray the roaches, and most die, but a few have a little something in their blood that lets them shrug it off. Those few live. They breed, and their children are tougher than the ones you killed. Do that for a few years and you have a roach that laughs at the can you bought. The exterminator knows this. It is half the reason he comes back every month, but a bug cannot evolve its way out of being cut open. You cannot breed a roach with a body that does not need water. There is no resistance to a scratch. There never has been and there never will be. That is why my grandfather's sack worked the same in his day as it works in yours. This is the part the spray company will never put on the label. Now, before you run to the store, I have to stop you, because there is one mistake here that can hurt you, and I would never forgive myself if I did not say it plain. There are two kinds of this powder, and they are not the same. One kind is sold for swimming pool filters. It has been cooked at very high heat, and that heat changes the little glass shells into a hard form that is bad for your lungs. Do not use the pool kind in your home. Not in your kitchen, not for your pets, not anywhere near food. The kind you want says food grade. Right on the bag. Food grade. That is the only kind to bring into your house. Food grade is so safe that farmers have mixed it right into grain for storage for 100 years, and people have taken it by the spoonful. I am not telling you to eat it. I am telling you how gentle it is to you, while it is deadly to anything with 6 legs and a shell. Look for the words food grade. If the bag does not say it, put it back. A 10-pound bag of the food grade kind costs somewhere around $12 to $15, and it will last you years. Think about that next to a single exterminator visit. The average pest control visit in this country runs about $150, and the yearly contract many folks sign costs them $500 or more every single year for as long as they own the house. $500 a year. For something a $15 bag handles, if you know how to use it, that is not a small leak in your bucket. That is the bucket with no bottom at all. And the powder does not expire. It is rock. It was patient enough to wait millions of years at the bottom of a sea. It can wait in your cupboard. So let me show you how to use it, because this is where most folks get it wrong and then say it did not work. The single most important rule, write it on your hand if you have to, less is more. When people first get this powder, they pour it down like they are salting a sidewalk in an ice storm, a thick white line of it along the wall. That is exactly wrong. A bug is not a fool. It will see a thick pile of strange powder and walk around it the same way you would step over a snowbank. What you want is a layer so thin you can barely see it. A haze, a whisper of dust. The bug needs to walk through it without noticing, so it picks the powder up on its legs and carries it home into the cracks where it lives, where you could never reach. That is the secret. You are not building a wall. You are laying a trap, so light the bug never knows it stepped in it. The best tool for this is not a scoop. It is a simple squeeze bottle. An old ketchup bottle, washed out and dried, works perfect. A puff bottle they sell for a couple dollars works too. You fill it about a third full, never more, and you give it a gentle squeeze, and a fine cloud settles into the crack. That is all. For ants, you follow their trail. Watch where they come in. Along the windowsill, behind the stove, under the door, that little crack where the counter meets the wall. You puff a light dusting right across their highway, and into the gap they march out of. Within a few days, the trail goes quiet, then it goes empty. You are not just killing the scouts you see. The ones you see are nothing. They are 1 in 100. The powder rides home on their bodies into the nest you cannot find, and it does its slow work where the queen sits. That is the difference between killing ants and ending ants. The spray you buy kills the ones on the counter and makes you feel like you won. The nest sends more by morning. The powder goes where the nest is. Now, I told you there is a cost to not knowing this, and here it is, plain. Every year you spray, you are paying to kill the messengers while the kingdom stays whole. You are renting a feeling, not buying a result. My people never had that kind of money to throw at a problem twice, so we learned to solve it once. Now, let me tell you about a study, because I know how the English mind works. You want proof from a man in a white coat, not just an old Amish fellow telling you about his grandfather's barn. That is fair. I respect that. Researchers at more than one farm college have tested this dust against the bugs that eat stored grain, the weevils and the beetles that ruin a harvest. In trials, going back decades, a light coating of this fossil dust killed upward of 90% of those grain insects within a week, and in the right, dry conditions very near all of them. The United States Department of Agriculture has known about its power against stored grain pests for generations, and it is approved to be mixed right in with grain meant for people to eat. Think about what that tells you. The government's own science says this dust is deadly to insects and safe enough to mix into your bread flour at the same time. That is not folklore. That is the outside world's own laboratories finally writing down what my grandfather already knew with a burlap sack and a steady hand. But here is the catch that the studies all point to, and it is the one thing that decides whether this works for you or not. It has to stay dry. Remember how it kills. It scratches the bug, and the bug dries out. The whole power of it is in pulling water away. So if the powder itself gets wet, it stops, and wet dust clumps up. The sharp edges fill with water, and they do not bite anymore. Once it dries out again, it works again. But while it is damp, it is just mud. This is why folks who sprinkle it outside before rain come back and say it failed. It did not fail. It got rained on. So inside the house, you put it in the dry places. Under the sink, in the back corner, behind the refrigerator, in the cracks of the baseboard, inside the little gap under the dishwasher, in the back of the cabinet where the pipes come through the wall, dry places, the very places bugs love and you never clean. That is the whole game, and you leave it. That is the hard part for busy folks. You do not wipe it up the next morning. You lay it down light in the hidden dry places, and you let it sit and work for a week, 2 weeks. It is patient. You have to be patient too. Now, I promised you I would show you how to clear a whole house of fleas, and this is where I keep that promise, because fleas are the thing this powder was almost made for, and most folks have no idea. If you have a dog or a cat, you know the misery of fleas, you know the little black specks, the scratching at 2 a.m, the bites around your own ankles, the shame of it when company comes, and you know what the store sells you? The drops for the back of the neck, the collars, the foggers that make you leave the house for 4 hours and come back to a chemical smell in the carpet where your grandbabies crawl. Some of those treatments run $30, $40, $50 a month per animal, and the fleas come right back because you only treated the dog, not the house. Here is the thing nobody tells you about fleas. The fleas you see on the dog are about 5 out of every 100. That is all. The other 95 are not on the animal at all. They are eggs and tiny larvae down in your carpet, deep in the fibers, under the couch cushions, in the cracks of the floorboards, in the dog's bed. You can treat your dog perfectly and still lose, because the carpet is a flea factory pumping out new ones every day. So here is how my family handled it, and how you can do it this very weekend. First, you take the animals out of the room, and any fish tank you cover or carry out just to be safe. You take that light dust, the food grade, in your squeeze bottle, and you work it into the carpet, not a pile on top. You sprinkle a fine haze, and then you take a broom, an old stiff broom, and you sweep it back and forth so the powder sinks down into the roots of the carpet where the eggs are hiding. You do the whole floor, along the baseboards especially, under the furniture. The dog's bed, if it cannot be washed, gets a dusting too. Then you leave it. Here is the patience again. You leave it for 2 days. 3 is better. The longer, the better. While it sits, every flea larva down in that carpet that crawls through it gets scratched and dries out. The grown fleas that hatch and hop walk right through it and die. You are killing them across their whole life, not just the moment you can see them. After those few days, you take your vacuum and you go over it slow twice. You pull up the dust and the dead with it. And here is a trick on top of the trick. Before you start, put a little of the powder into the vacuum bag or canister itself. A spoonful. Because fleas you suck up are not always dead. They can crawl back out of a vacuum. But if there is powder waiting in the bag, they crawl into their own grave. You empty that vacuum outside into a bag, and you tie it shut and you throw it away. One careful weekend. A $15 bag you will use 1/40th of. And the thing the chemical company wanted to charge you $40 a month for forever is simply over. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, and you are right to think it. You are thinking, This all sounds fine for a young couple in a brand new little house with bare floors and empty rooms, but my home is not new. I have lived here 40 years. I have carpet and furniture and a finished basement and a garden bed against the foundation. My problem is not a fresh start. My problem is everything I already have. I hear you. And I want to speak to you for a moment, because this powder is actually better for an old, settled home than a new one. And let me tell you why. An old home has more cracks, more gaps, more of those dark, dry hiding places I have been telling you about. And every one of those is a place this dust can go and a poison spray cannot stay. So here is what you do this weekend with the home you already have, and you need nothing but the bag and a squeeze bottle and maybe a flashlight. You walk your house slow, like a man checking his fences. You are hunting for the gaps, the place where the pipe under the sink goes into the wall. There is almost always a gap there, and it is a highway. Puff it. The little seam where the kitchen counter meets the backsplash. Puff a thin line. Behind the stove, pull it out if you can, and dust along the wall where it meets the floor. Behind and under the refrigerator, that warm, dark space the roaches love. A light dusting along the back edge. The basement, where the wall meets the floor all the way around. The sill plate up top, where the foundation meets the wood. Every window well. The garage, along the door and the walls. And here is the one most folks miss. Your outlet covers on the outside walls. Take a screwdriver, turn off nothing, just gently remove the cover plate. Bugs travel inside your walls along the wiring, and they come out at the outlets. A small puff of dust into that space behind the cover, then screw it back on, and you have just sealed a road you never knew was open. You go around the whole house doing that, and you have laid down a quiet net through every hidden path in your home in an afternoon for the price of a sandwich. You did not tear anything out. You did not buy anything new. You used the bones of your old house against the bugs, and the older the house, the more bones there are to use. Now outside, because for a settled home with a yard and a garden, the outside is where the war is really won. You have an anthill in the lawn. You have wasps coming up under the porch boards. You have those awful pill bugs and earwigs in the flower bed against the house. For the anthill, you wait for a dry stretch, no rain coming. You knock the top off the hill with your boot, just open it up, and you puff the dust right down into the hole and a ring around it. The ants track it down into the colony as they rebuild. You are not standing there with a kettle of boiling water dancing around the mound. You let them carry their own end home. For the garden bed, a light dusting around the base of the plants and along the soil where the soft-bodied bugs crawl. Slugs and pill bugs and earwigs crossing it get the same treatment as everything else. But remember the rule, it must be dry. So you dust after the morning dew has burned off, and you do it again after a rain, because the rain washes its teeth away. A light hand, a dry day, and patience. That is the whole of it. Now, I want to come back to the people who profit from you not knowing all this, because the more I tell you, the clearer their game becomes. It is not one company. That is what took me years to understand. It is a whole arrangement. The brand that makes the spray. The big store that stacks it at the end of the aisle where you cannot miss it. The service company with the truck and the friendly fellow in the polo shirt. The fellow on the television telling you bugs are a sign of shame and you had best call right now. None of them are lying to you exactly. The spray does kill the roach on the counter. The truck does come when you call. But the whole arrangement is built on one quiet idea. That you should remain a customer forever. A product that ends your problem is a bad product. To them, a product you have to buy again next month, that is a good product. A service you sign up for and never cancel, that is the best of all. So the thing that actually ends it, the cheap rock dust that does not wear out and does not expire and works the same forever, that thing is the one you will never see advertised. There is no money in a cure. There is endless money in a treatment. My people stepped outside that arrangement a long time ago, not out of cleverness, but out of plain necessity. We did not have the cash to be anybody's forever customer. We had to find the thing that worked once and kept working. And what we found, the outside world, is only now circling back to one tired homeowner at a time. Now, let me give you the part I have been saving. The thing most folks who use this powder still do not know, even the ones who swear by it. because there is a way to make this dust work far better than just sprinkling it dry, and it comes from an old trick my grandfather used that I did not understand until I was a grown man. He would take the dust and he would mix it with water into a thin, milky, slurry, like watered down paint. Now you are thinking, but you just spent 10 minutes telling me water kills it. And you are right. Wet, it does not work. Here is the secret. The water is only the carriage, not the horse. When you brush or spray that milky slurry onto a surface, the water carries the dust into every tiny crack and corner and into rough wood where dry powder would never reach or stay. Then the water dries away. Gone. And it leaves behind an even clinging coat of that fossil dust fixed right onto the surface in places and at a thinness your hand could never lay down dry. You can paint it along the top of a fence rail where the bugs travel, along a barn beam, around a window frame, into the rough crack of a porch step, onto the legs of a chicken coop. It dries to a faint, pale film, barely there to the eye, and any bug that crosses it gets the same scratch and the same slow end. Only now the dust is anchored where the wind and the broom cannot take it away. This is how you protect the spots a loose powder always blew off of. The slurry goes on wet, grabs hold, dries hard, and stands guard for weeks. The mix is simple. Roughly a quarter cup of the food-grade dust to a couple cups of water, stirred till it is milky, and you keep stirring as you go because it wants to settle. A cheap paintbrush or spray bottle if you keep shaking it. I have seen this written up in the old farm extension notes as a method for treating roost poles and coop walls, the very thing my grandfather did by feel decades before anyone wrote it down. That is the whole truth of it right there. The plain people kept doing the thing while the outside world forgot it, and now the colleges are slowly rediscovering it and calling it new. It is not new, it is just remembered. And now you remember it too. So picture it. Next spring, instead of the truck in the driveway and the bill in the mail, you spend one quiet Saturday. You puff the light dust into the dry, hidden places inside. You paint the milky slurry on the fence rail and the porch step and the coop. You dust the ant hill on a dry afternoon. You sweep a fine haze into the carpet and let it sit, and then you vacuum it up clean. And then you are done. Not done for the month, done. The bugs that come are met by a thing they cannot adapt to, cannot smell, cannot learn, and cannot survive, laid down by your own hand for a few dollars. That is what my grandfather had in that burlap sack in the grain barn. Not a chemical, not a brand, just the patient dust of a billion little creatures that died in an ancient sea, ground fine, doing the same plain work it has done since long before there was anyone to sell it to you. You were never meant to pay $500 a year for what the ground gives up for 15. Somewhere along the way, the outside world traded that knowledge for convenience, and then somebody figured out how to sell the convenience back again and again forever. My people just never let go of it. And now neither will you. If you are the kind of person who is tired of renting a solution you could own, who would rather do a thing once with your own two hands than pay a stranger to half do it every month, then this was always yours. You just had to be told where to look. So here is the one thing I will ask of you. Go back up to the comments and tell me which bug you are fighting. Ants, roaches, fleas, bedbugs, silverfish, beetles in the flour, the name of the thing you are after. Just type the word. I am reading them, and the answer changes a little depending on the enemy. So tell me, and I will tell you exactly where to lay the dust for that one. Do not just nod and scroll on. Take the 10 seconds and leave the word. It helps the next worried person who finds this too. And if you would like to keep recovering the plain, simple ways the outside world buried so it could sell them back to you, then come along with us. This is not about following a channel. It is about a group of folks more every day putting practical knowledge back into their own hands where it belongs. Because next time, I am going to show you the one cheap thing my grandmother kept by the door that kept mice out of the house all winter, with no traps and no poison and nothing for a pet or a child to find. It is sitting in most kitchens right now, and almost nobody remembers what it was for. Stay with us, and you will. But before you go, let me leave you with one more thing about this powder, because it will save you a headache. When you lay the dust down inside, mark the date on a little scrap of paper and tuck it in the cabinet. 2 weeks. That is your reminder to go back, vacuum up the old, and lay a fresh haze if the bug is still about. Most folks forget where they put it and then wonder why it quit. It did not quit. It got buried under dust and dander and crumbs, and a buried trap catches nothing. A bug needs to touch it. So keep it fresh, keep it thin, keep it dry, and keep it in the dark corners where the broom never reaches. Do that, and you will go a whole season without thinking about bugs at all. And there is no finer feeling in an old, settled home than that quiet. The quiet of a problem you finally solved for good with your own hands, the plain way. That is what my people kept. And now it is yours to keep too.